Good morning. Welcome to the Space Station Flight Control Room. I'm Brandi Dean with NASA Public Affairs Office, and I'm joined today by Liz Warren, who is with the Space Station Program Science Office. And we are going to be joined remotely by students from Fayette Academy in Somerville, Tennessee, and I believe they have some questions for us. Can y'all hear us okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll get started on your questions.
Well, good morning. I'm the Principal Research Investigator for the Student Spaceflight Experiments Research Project that was selected to go to the International Space Station in October. Our research project focuses on the reishi mushroom's effect on chronic myeloid leukemia's biological model, E. coli in microgravity. My question is, what type of research has been done in recent years on the International Space Station that will help to make it possible to keep people in space for prolonged periods of time with minimal negative effects on the space travelers?
Well, first of all, I want to say hello and greetings. Brandi and I had a communication with Butch Wilmore, who's going to be on orbit when your experiment gets there. And he wasn't able to be here today. He's actually on his way to Russia. But he did say that he's going to take real good care of your experiment, so that's pretty cool. I also think it's fantastic that you guys are participating in the SSEP program. It's fantastic to see young people be interested in science and then propose an experiment. And I'll tell you what, if I was your age and I was able to have an experiment on the space station, I would be over the moon. So I'm proud of you guys. Thanks very much for participating, and I hope you get excellent results. Now to answer your question. So we've actually done a tremendous amount of work studying what happens to the human body in space. And some of those changes that happen to the human body, they're not very good for us. So we try and mitigate those changes. And some of those changes include, and some of them you may have heard of, astronauts tend to lose bone or bone density while they're in space. The lack of the loading of gravity is removed. So microgravity is what we say the astronauts are living in space. And microgravity causes your bones to get weaker. It's also true for your cardiovascular system and your muscles, and even the immune system gets weaker. So living in space isn't all that great for the human body. Fortunately, we've learned a lot over the 50 some odd years that we've been doing spaceflight, and we've learned to mitigate a lot of those changes. So astronauts exercise a lot on orbit. We allot them about 2 hours a day to work out, and that includes a little bit of time for hygiene and getting changed. But that exercise helps them maintain bone strength and cardiovascular fitness and muscle strength, and has some other beneficial effects for just improving their mood, and it's kind of a stress relief as well. So that's kind of a high-level overview of what we do to keep our astronauts safe while they're in space.
Next question.
Hi. I wanted to know if you've ever performed any research on metabolism, if that had any effect with the anti-gravity, and if you have, what kind of research experiments have you done?
Well, when I was a university student and then in grad school, I was really interested in metabolism. And metabolism is sort of how your body controls how much energy it takes in through the form of calories. So eating food, how much energy you expend, so daily metabolic rate and exercise, and how those things balance out to maintain our body mass. And I was interested if going to a different gravity level would affect metabolism. Different gravity all the way from maybe more gravity than is on Earth to less gravity than is on Earth. And so I actually was able to perform some experiments here on Earth using a centrifuge to expose my subjects to more than one gravity, actually 2 times Earth gravity. And I found that, not surprisingly, that caused more energy expenditure. So there was a little more intake requirement. The more energy you expend, the more food you have to eat to maintain normal energy balance. And the reverse was true in space, sort of. It wasn't exactly what I was hoping to find, so my hypothesis was not exactly supported, but that's kind of one of the cool things about science. You ask a question, you form a hypothesis, what you think the answer is going to be, then you perform the experiment, and sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong, but either way, you have learned something. And so I had that experience and that opportunity when I got to college, and part of my experiment was done on a space shuttle mission. It was STS-90. It was a NeuroLab mission. It was called NeuroLab mission. And so that was a great opportunity for me. You guys are getting to do the same thing now when you're in high school. So you guys are well ahead of the game.
Sounds like you're the perfect person to answer that question, too. Good job. So, next question.
Hi. Our school was mentored by Dr. Raquel Collins Underwood, a researcher from St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, during our student spaceflight experience program. My research team designed a project that focused on what effect would microgravity have on the growth rate of chronic myeloid leukemia. We were one of our school's finalists, but our experiment will not be going to the International Space Station. Do you know if there has been research on the ISS that focuses on the effect of microgravity on the growth rate of leukemic cells?
So, first of all, let me say, the fact that your exact experiment isn't going to make it to the space station, don't let that discourage you. The whole fact that you came up with an idea and proposed it to NASA is something to be very proud of. It certainly doesn't preclude you from being involved in the future, and I hope that you'll consider to do that. Research and science is something that is so much fun, and I'm proud of you, all of you, for being involved and asking a question. Please don't ever lose that curiosity. It keeps us all going, keeps me going as a scientist. So to answer your question about leukemia cells in space, I think a lot of examples have been flown, a lot of cells have been flown in microgravity in space, including leukemia cells. And you asked specifically about growth rate. From the literature that I'm aware of, I think we've actually seen that growth rate of some leukemia cells is arrested or stopped in microgravity. That doesn't mean it's always going to be true, or it's going to be true for all cell lines. So we still have a lot to learn. But from what I'm familiar with, we have seen microgravity affect multiple aspects of cell life, growth, cytoskeletal activity, meiosis, or separation and division of cells. So we've seen a lot of changes, but we still have a lot to learn. So I save that experiment and propose it another time.
That's fascinating. Y'all are asking great questions. I think we're ready for the next one.
Hi, my name is Bowman. I wanted to know, would the lack of gravity change the development of a chicken egg?
So that's a fascinating question, and it's been proposed, and it's actually been flown on several spaceflight experiments, chicken eggs, quail eggs, and different kinds of bird eggs. And I think that our findings have been a little bit inconclusive, but for the most part, we have actually seen that chicken eggs are able to develop when you launch them to space and incubate them, and there's actually been some hatching of bird eggs on the Mir space station, which was the precursor to the International Space Station. So we've had some success. It hasn't been a perfect system. The reason we ask questions like this, and I assume this is why you're asking the question as well, is it's understanding, is there a role of gravity in the development of an embryo? And I think the jury is still out on for sure knowing if gravity is important or not. There's two schools of thoughts. One, of course, is that gravity is required for early in gestation for development of like the neural tube of the organism, but we've seen success without it. So I think the jury's still out. We've seen some success, but it hasn't been perfect. I think we still have a little bit to understand, maybe some more experiments to do.
Okay, next question.
I was wondering, what effect does microgravity have on the human body?
Well, a little bit earlier, I talked about some of those effects, and I'll go ahead and repeat them again because it's really what's very, very interesting to me. I am a physiologist, and I'm interested in how the human body works, which is fascinating itself. But when you take the human body and you put it in an extreme environment like space or under the ocean, those environmental changes cause a lot of problems for the human body in some cases. But we are extremely adaptable. It's one of the wonderful things about the human body. We can live in a number of extreme environments, and it's really fun to study what happens. So when you go into space, microgravity is one of the largest environmental changes. There's no gravity or no measurable gravity on the human body. There's also radiation. So the environment is pretty different than what we experience here on Earth. And the changes that the human body undergoes includes, like I mentioned before, some bone loss, some muscle atrophy, loss of muscle, some cardiovascular deconditioning. That's your heart and your lungs and your cardiovascular system getting weaker. Some immune system changes, even some neurovestibular changes. Without normal gravity, your inner ear gets a little bit confused. Usually that resolves itself pretty quickly. But so there's a number of changes that the human body has to accommodate and adapt to. But again, because we're such an adaptable species, within a couple days, people get very used to living in space. When they come back to Earth, they have to readapt to gravity as well. But if they've been exercising and eating right and taking care of themselves, that adaptation back to Earth gravity isn't so bad. And like I said, we really want our astronauts to be healthy when they get back to Earth, or when we get to whatever terrestrial environment we're going to. When we go to the moon or an asteroid or Mars, again, we want our astronauts to be healthy when they get to where they're going. And so it's very important that they exercise, eat right, and take care of their bodies. Same thing for you and I. Eating and getting enough exercise is important for our bodies as well.
It sounds like we're really starting to get a good handle on that, right?
Yeah, I think we're really starting to get a good handle on it. We're still learning a lot, however. You may be aware that next March we are going to be launching 2 people that are going to live on the space station for an entire year, a 1-year mission. Most of our experience is about 6 months. The people that are in space right now, they're going to stay there for about 6 months on the International Space Station. We've had a lot of experience. Many people have stayed on the International Space Station for 6 months. We're going to learn some more when we go to 1 year. It's twice as long. So we're pretty excited to do this and undertake this mission and learn about the changes in the human body that occur over a year. And we hope to learn a lot. We also hope to find out that what we're doing for 6 months works for a year as well.
Okay, I think we're ready for the next question.
Do you believe that there are planets similar to Earth past our galaxy? And if so, do you believe there's intelligent life?
So NASA has a spacecraft. It's a telescope called the Kepler Space Telescope, and its entire job is to search for planets that are maybe like Earth outside of our galaxy. And I think many have been found, well over 1,000, probably closer to 1,500 planets that are somewhat similar to Earth in habitable zones near stars. But do I believe intelligent life exists out there? Not really. But I do believe that certainly, even maybe in our own solar system, like on Mars, at some point may have supported some bacterial life or some kind of little cyanobacteria. The conditions for life have to be pretty precise. You have to, as we know it, you have to have some kind of water. You have to have something for the life to consume, and the life has to produce waste. And when you find water and you find moderate temperatures and you find minerals and resources, I think there's a good chance that some type of life, bacterial life, could have existed or will exist. So I think it's only a matter of time before we find some other place in the universe where potentially life could be.
Next question.
What type of training is required to be an astronaut, and how long does it usually take?
Brandi, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I can take that one. So there's several different kind of layers, I guess, to that question. First of all, to even become an astronaut, you have to have some experience in working and some degrees in math or science fields, and really be pretty good at what you're already doing. But then once you are selected to be an astronaut, you've got a little ways to go from there. You've got the initial training that all the astronauts go through that takes a couple of years, just getting them kind of caught up and up to speed on what astronauts do and all the different kind of activities they might be called on. And then once you actually get assigned to a mission, you've got some more training to do. So you have to learn a lot to be an astronaut. It's not an easy job, but I think they would mostly, probably all, tell you that it's definitely worth the time that it takes. They seem to have a lot of fun up in space. So.
And there are pilots who have become astronauts. There are medical doctors who have become astronauts, engineers, and lots of different types of scientists, geologists. Alex Gerst, an ESA astronaut in space right now, he's a volcanologist. He's interested in volcanoes. And so all kinds of different backgrounds can be fields that contribute to the space program and being selected as an astronaut.
One of the things I've heard a lot of them say is pick a field that you really enjoy, because if you enjoy what you're doing, you'll be really good at it. And being really good at it will kind of raise you to the top of your class and help you stand out when it comes time to actually apply to be an astronaut. Hope that answers your question. Next one.
Hi, I was wondering why time on Earth was different from time in space.
Okay, that's a pretty complex question, and I'm probably not the best person to answer it, but I'll give it a shot. So the Einstein, in his theory of relativity, stated that gravity affects time. And when you're close to a gravitational field, time slows down a little bit. So the further you are away from a gravitational field, the faster time goes. So we've actually measured this in spacecraft just in low Earth orbit. And so just a little bit away from Earth, there's just slightly less gravity, and that actually affects time. And so that somewhat answers your question. And I know it's not perfect, because I certainly don't have the best explanation, but I will tell you that an astronaut living in space for 6 months will actually age 0.007 seconds less than us here on Earth. And so I'll point out that one of the astronauts that is going to be living in space for 1 year on that 1-year mission, he has a twin brother. So Scott Kelly is the astronaut who will be living in space for a year. He has a twin brother who's going to stay here on Earth. His name is Mark Kelly. And so they're twins. So there's a slight age difference between them anyways, just probably minutes, I don't know exactly. But when Scott gets home, he's going to be, just a little bit younger than Mark will have been.
All right, next question.
We hear on the news that Mars and Earth have similar environments. Even though there is no proof of life existing on Mars today, is there a possibility that humans might one day live there?
Oh, I sure hope so. We're going to live on Mars one day. I think we're going to have a colony, and there's people that are going to be staying there and living there. It's a little ways off, though, because it's very challenging to do. We're going to need to bring with us some pretty technologically advanced life support equipment. We have some very technologically advanced life support equipment on the space station right now. You can't live in space without bringing air and water and an environment and pressure and radiation protection. You're going to need all of those things on Mars too. So Mars is somewhat similar to Earth in size and the amount of sunlight it gets, but there's more radiation, more UV radiation. It's really cold there. The atmosphere is very thin. And it's a lot of carbon dioxide. We have mostly nitrogen in our atmosphere. They have mostly carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide is not really the most beneficial things for humans to breathe in high quantities. So when we live on Mars, we're going to have to bring a lot of our own equipment. But that's part of the fun, right? It's part of the fun of exploration and learning. So yeah, I think we're definitely going to live on Mars one day, but we're just going to have to bring a lot of comforts of home with us.
And we're building right now the spaceship that will take us there, Orion. It's getting ready to go on its first test flight. It won't go to Mars the first time, or even the second or third time. But we're gonna send it 3,600 miles into space to test out a lot of its systems that we really want to make sure work before we put people on it. And that test flight's coming up in December. So we've just about got the spacecraft finished. It's being built in Florida at Kennedy Space Center, and it's supposed to launch on December 4th. And we're also working on the rocket that would let us go to Mars as well. So that'll be launching in 2017 or 2018. Next question.
Hello and good morning. My question for y'all is, what changes do you see coming to research aboard the International Space Station?
So right now, we've had about 1,550 different research investigations on the space station, and come October, we'll be counting, your school as having one of those investigations. So that's a lot, and there's a lot coming. And some of the changes that we see coming are we always have new facilities going to the space station that allow for new capabilities. In fact, one of those new capabilities is going to get there this fall, where we're going to bring a 3D printer to the space station. And that we're actually doing research with it because we're not absolutely positive that it's going to work. So we're going to bring it to the space station to test it out. And once it's there, we're going to be able to perhaps build spare parts. I know that Butch Wilmore is pretty excited to get that 3D printer up there because he's a very handy guy. He likes to build stuff, and I think he's pretty excited to have that up there. That's one example of a capability. We also have a new habitat for fruit flies, and we're going to be able to do a lot of genetics type of genomics experiments on them. So we always have new equipment going to the space station, new capabilities, and new areas of research that we're looking forward to performing. And that's just a quick highlight. But if you go to our website, which is www.nasa.gov/ISS-science, you can see we put out a lot of information there about the new facilities that are going to the space station, the facilities that already exist there. We have a centrifuge for spinning fluids down, bodily fluids, and otherwise. We have some freezers, really deep freezers, minus 80 degrees Celsius for storing samples. We've got a combustion furnace for doing combustion research. We've got a fluids research rack for doing fluids research. So we've got all types of equipment that is open for all kinds of scientists all over the world to propose their science. And sometimes they have to have their own specialized equipment. We have a lot of equipment mounted outside the space station as well. So it's just more and more. There's room for more science on the space station, and that's something that we're interested in attracting. And I'm glad that we're starting with students like yourselves. We'd like for more people to propose experiments for the space station.
Next question.
What kind of new technology is being used to keep astronauts safe while in the International Space Station?
Well, one type of new technology is we're always trying to improve the amount and the types of exercise that the astronauts do. We have 3 different devices up there. We have a type of treadmill, and we have a stationary bike, and we have an advanced resistive exercise device, which is kind of like a SoloFlex. It's like a modifiable gym equipment where you're not lifting weights, but you're working against a resistive load. And that's been up there for a little while, but we're really kind of learning how best to use it by having really high intensity exercise, and that's seeming to maintain astronaut bone very well. And other technologies include better nutrition as well. We've found that we have to reduce the amount of sodium intake that the astronauts are getting, and that involves a whole team of food scientists here on the ground because the food has to taste good, so it has to be palatable, has to have low salt, but also has to have a good shelf life, because once the food gets packaged and then launched to the space station, we want it to be able to stay good and viable, and all the nutrients are still available in the food for a while. And so there's technologies that we're working on the ground as well to help keep astronauts healthy in space.
Okay, next question.
What planets outside of this solar system would be able to sustain human life?
I don't think we have found any just yet, but I think we're searching, we're looking. We've found planets that are similar in size to Earth. We've found planets that are similar in distance to a star as Earth is. So we're looking, and I think one day we might find that we're not quite so unique. There are billions and billions of stars and billions of galaxies. So I think the longer we look, the more we're going to find. But those places are pretty far away.
And Fayette Academy, this is NASA's Digital Learning Network, Michael Hare. Just wanted to say that we're running out of time, so I just wanted to see if you guys want to say any final words or thank you to Dr. Warren and Miss Dean there in Mission Control.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry we didn't get a chance to get everybody's question, but I'm sure glad you guys called today. I'm glad we could answer some of your questions. And good luck with your experiment. I'm very excited to see it get up there. I know Butch is as well. And stay curious. Keep asking questions. Be scientists.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.